Okay, in this video, I want to talk about how we can use these two columns I have highlighted to grade your CFA for you. That is, the goal is you go through and so, if you're doing the spreadsheet based upon days, you type in, on day 1, this student got a 1, this student got a 3, this student got a 1. And then day 2, they got a 2, a 0, 0, 3. And then day 3, all 3s. And by the end, it calculates your grade for you. That way, you're just entering in your data into the spreadsheet once. It's all too often that when we take CFA data, there's one way that we take the data, and that could be something like this. Just count it in 0, 1, 2s, and 3s if if we're just taking in the numbers that each student got correct. But then you'll have to go back and pull out your paper CFAs and grade them a second time for your gradebook grade, and we don't want to do that. We'd rather just grade once. There's enough things taking up our time as teachers, so the goal is to set these two columns up to your preference. And there is no shortage of ways to do that on Excel. Just about any way that you can think about grading your CFA, you can. So I want to just go through and kind of explain what's currently on the sheet, like how it's currently set up, and then show you a couple of ways that I've seen some people do it. So here's one way. And that is the way that the spreadsheet is set up. Currently, this column here takes the sum of each student's scores over the 3 days. So that is, this 6 is saying, well, John Doe here got a 1 plus a 2 plus a 3, a total of 6 questions right. And that's a total of 6 questions right out of the 9. So the next column with the CFA grade, we can see in the function, takes F7, or this 6 here in the raw sum, and it divides by 9, giving me the percent he got correct. But then I multiply by 100, and I'm going to round it to the 0, and what that 0 means is, you can see it says number of digits. That means 0 decimal place, and that's where I get this clean 67 from. Some of us don't like to grade that harshly. It is, it is tough on students if we don't find a way to curve their grade or just grade in a different manner so that it kind of brings the averages up. So another way that I've seen it done is this, and this is just another example. But I'm clearing all of these out. Instead of this being a raw sum data, or a raw sum column, I'm going to have it be an average column. And that is, this cell is going to be equal to the average of 1, 2, and 3. So rather than being the sum, just the average of them, and we will get 2 out. And if I copy and I paste this, that's what all of these cells do. However, notice some of them end up with really long decimals. So let me go back. Actually, rounding this often is very helpful. So if I round the average, so that's the number, the average, and then when it says number of digits after the comma, that's the number of digits I want, a number of decimal places I want, and I'm just going to put a 0. And so now when I copy and paste this, all of these will be whole numbers, integers. And let's say that I'm thinking in my head, well, a student who got 0 as an average, I want them to have a 30. And students who got 1 as an average, I want them to have a 60. And then students who got 2 as an average, I want them to have an 85. And of course, 3 out of 3, 100. So I'm going to write a function that says exactly that. And it's a bunch of nested ifs is what it's called. So I'm going to type in if, and I'm going to say if F7, or if the cell previous, let me go back, if this cell previous, oh, I forgot to put the equal sign, see, type equals if the cell previous equals 0, comma, value if that's true. That means that this logical test right here, the F7 equals 0, if that's true, what do we want the cell to be? And I'm going to say I want it to be a 30. And then otherwise, I'm going to say, well, if it's a 1, I want it to be a 60, and if it's a 2. So what I do is I nest another if inside of this function. So now I say, okay, well, if F7 equals 1, we said we wanted that the value that comes out to be a 60. And then the value of false is where I nest another if function, and I say, okay, now if F7 is 2. And we kind of see the process from here. I said I wanted it to be an 85, which is a B, on our grading scale at least. And the value is, if false, I nest my last if, where I say, okay, if F7 equals 3, then I want it to be 100. And otherwise, I'm going to put this in A. And the way that we've written the two functions, that's the function in the column from average and the function in the column for CFA 1 grade. These are the only three cases. It's either going to be 0, 1, 2, or 3. So I take this, I hit copy, and I can apply it to these cells, and you'll see that I get a different range of grades rather than if I just have the average, you know, a little bit nicer grades. Before this 0 would have been something lower than a 30, and this 1 would have been something lower than a 60, but these are, you know, just ways that you can kind of more determine exactly what grade you want to give them. And I'm going to go to my team spreadsheet to show you one other. The way that I have mine graded is I told my students in class that the whole reasoning behind these CFAs, doing them over 3 days in a row, and you know, in this case, in this spreadsheet, and the way that our team does the CFAs, the goal is that it's formative. You know, day 1 is kind of your baseline. See where you're at with this content right now. And the goal is to improve. And you can see some of my students have, and some of them haven't. So, you know, this student here had a 2, then a 3, then a 3. So she improved. And I told them, if the goal is improvement, then I'll only take your 2 highest grades. And so this function right here does exactly that. And this large function is in that packet. It explains kind of what the inputs are. But the very first one is a range. They're calling an array. And that array is, you know, these same 3 values that we used in the function before. And the second one is this k value. And what this k value is saying with these set brackets on the outside is it's saying take the highest 1, 2 numbers. So this 1, 2 is saying take the highest 2 numbers from this range and average them together. And so that's what this function does, is it takes the highest 2 grades and averages them together. For example, if I look here, the highest 2 grades are 3s, so it ignores this 2 and it just averages 3 and 3. That's why I get a 3. Or here, the highest 2 grades are both 2s, so it takes the highest, or it takes the average of those 2s. Or here, in this cell, my highest grade is 1, 3, and another 2. So it takes the average of 3 and 2, which is 2.5. And then, for my CFA grade, I have a bunch of nested ifs. You know, if that previous thing is, if X7, which is the previous cell, is a 0.5, if it's a 1, if it's a 1.5, it's a 2, if it's a 2.5, I have my different grades assigned accordingly. So those are just a couple ways that you can take, you know, your spreadsheet and grade it, have it do the grading for you. If you can have it do the grading for you, it makes it a lot easier on yourself, just with time. There's only so much time in the day, so if you're going to take the time aside, set the time aside to enter in your data, let's go ahead and have that spreadsheet grade it for you as well. And, you know, try to figure out exactly how you want it to grade. You know, you might just want a raw average, and that's fine. Or you might want a bunch of nested ifs, kind of like I've done here. But any way that you want to grade, it is possible for Excel to do. And so that's all I wanted to show you in this video. Yeah, that's it.